Good morning and welcome to Daily Devotions with Pastor Joe. I'm Pastor Joe, and for this morning's devotional, we're going to be looking at a judge, the judge of Israel named Jepthah, who is well known for some of the stories and deeds and things that he'd done, not so well known for everything, but for some of them. He was one of the more prominent judges in Israel. During this time, they were struggling quite a bit with Ammon, the children of Ammon, and so we're going to get down into this story. We're going to skip around a little bit because there's a total of, I think it's 47 verses that cover the span of Jephthah's judging and ruling over Israel, and so we're going to try and skim through this quickly. At the beginning of this video, I'd like to just recommend that you leave a like if you like this kind of content. Subscribe if you're new, share this video with a friend, and be sure to leave a comment down below with your thoughts about this study of Jephthah's life. Judges 11 verse 1 says, "Now Jepthah the Gileadite was a mighty man of valor, and he was the son of an harlot, and Gilead begat Jepthah. And Gilead's wife bare him sons, and his wife's sons grew up, and they thrust out Jepthah, and said unto him, Thou shalt not inherit in our father's house, for thou art the son of a strange woman." And so right here at the beginning, Jepthah and Gilead had Jepthah with a harlot. And so technically in the rules and laws of Israel, he was not entitled to much of anything, and it was several generations of his own children before there would be any care that Israel would care about that child. And so Jepthah was basically born as one who Israel would never care for, and all of the people would shun him, shut him out, push him away. And whenever Gilead's wife began to actually bear sons and they all grew up, they said, "Hey, you're not our mother's kid, so you're no good in this household. Get out of here. You're not going to have a part in the inheritance, so you need to leave." And so then it says, "Then Jepthah fled from his brethren and dwelt in the land of Tob, and there were gathered vain men to Jepthah and went out with him." So in other words, all of the riffraff, all of the people who had nothing, the city didn't care about, that Israel didn't care about, that they had pushed out and shunned, gathered to Jepthah, and Jepthah became kind of their captain, kind of their king and leader. Similar in the fashion to what David did when many men came out and gathered with him when he was wandering in the wilderness, fleeing from Saul. Verse 4, "And it came to pass in process of time that the children of Ammon made war against Israel. And it was so that when the children of Ammon made war against Israel, the elders of Gilead went to fetch Jepthah out of the land of Tob." "And they said unto Jepthah, Come and be our captain, that we may fight with the children of Ammon. And Jepthah said unto the elders of Gilead, Did not ye hate me, and expel me out of my father's house? And why are ye come unto me now, when ye are in distress?" Or in other words, who do you think you are to come to me after you kick me out of my father's house? Come to me and say, "Hey, you're a big tough guy. You come lead us." No, he's very upset with this. "The elders of Gilead said unto Jepthah, Therefore we turn again to thee now, that thou mayest go with us and fight against the children of Ammon, and be our head over all the inhabitants of Gilead." And Jepthah said unto the elders of Gilead, If ye bring me home again to fight against the children of Ammon, that the Lord deliver them before me, shall I be your head? Or in other words, will I be your leader? And the elders of Gilead said unto Jepthah, The Lord be witness between us, if we do not so according to thy words. Then Jepthah went with the elders of Gilead, and the people made him head and captain over them. And Jepthah uttered all his words before the Lord in Mizpah. And so we're going to skip down through here, different things they began fighting with and chasing after, and all kinds of things went on between them and Ammon and different countries. And down here in verse 27, he was sending a message to the king of Ammon. He said, "Wherefore I have not sinned against thee, but thou doest me wrong to war against me. The Lord, the judge, be judge this day between the children of Israel and the children of Ammon. Howbeit the king of the children of Ammon hearkened not unto the words of Jepthah, which he sent him." And so the king of Ammon here is getting a warning from Jephthah, basically telling him, stay off, stay back, or we're going to cause you a lot of trouble. And as we had read originally in verse 1, Jephthah is a mighty man of valor. That means he's one of the big guys. He's one of the tough guys, that there's things that are special about him. You would have said the same of those like Goliath, who was a very large man, or some of his brothers who were born with multiple fingers and toes. There was something strange about them, and they were stronger than the average man. And so that's the people who were called the mighty men of valor. Then it says, the Spirit of the Lord came upon Jephthah, so now he's about to sort of receive a extra dose of God's Spirit during this time. And he passed over Gilead and Manasseh, and passed over Mizpah of Gilead, and from Mizpah of Gilead he passed over unto the children of Ammon. And then Jephthah does what most people call a tragic vow, as you see it says here, or something stupid. Jephthah vowed a vow unto the Lord, and said, if thou shalt without fail deliver the children of Ammon into mine hands, then it shall be that whatsoever cometh forth of the doors of my house to meet me, when I return in peace from the children of Ammon, shall surely be the Lord's, and I will offer it up for a burnt offering. And so with this, we hear the idea that he made in this moment something that would have been a beautiful vow of saying, God gives me victory in this war, then absolutely I'm going to offer the first thing that comes out of my door up to God and as a burnt offering. And let's go on down there. He went to the fight, and he fought, and it was great, and he subdued them. Children of Ammon were subdued before Israel. And Jephthah came to Mizpah unto his house, and behold, his daughter came out to meet him with timbrels and with dances, and she was his only child. Beside her he had neither son nor daughter. And it came to pass, when he saw her, that he rent his clothes, he ripped his clothes, and said, alas, my daughter, thou hast brought me very low, and thou art one of them that trouble me, for I have opened my mouth unto the Lord, and I cannot go back. He says, I made a promise that concerns you, now that you've come out the house, and I can't go back on that promise. I've got to fulfill my promise to God. And so some people say, well, okay, did he offer her as a burnt sacrifice then? And the problem with that is God wouldn't have accepted a sacrifice like that. God wouldn't have allowed that in his name to have happened. Human sacrifice is absolutely an abomination to God in any fashion whatsoever. And so that wouldn't have been a very good thing for him to be doing and promising, let's put that simply. And on top of that, I don't think, even no matter how low Israel had gotten at this time, that they would have thought it a good idea, and they would have fought against him and stopped him from keeping that promise. On top of that, a few of the commentators that I've read after said, brought this point up, if this is really the intention, then that, he wouldn't have had any right to say if his neighbor or his neighbor's wife were walking out the door where they had been over to his house to visit, then he wouldn't have had any right to take them and burn them as a sacrifice or offer them in any way for God. And so, as Adam Clarke had put it, it seems almost as if the basically right here, the word "it" seems to have been a mistake, but I wouldn't necessarily put it that way. But basically what it seems to be saying really is, shall surely be the Lord. So whatever comes out of the house, I'm going to dedicate it to God, and I will offer a burnt offering to God, is what it seems to be really intimating and intending here. But anyway, his daughter says, whatever you've said to the Lord, do to me according to that which has proceeded out of your mouth. Here's where it comes interesting to kind of interpret this differently than a burnt sacrifice, okay? She was not, I don't believe, a burnt sacrifice to God. I believe it was a two-part thing. He said, I'm going to burn a sacrifice to God. I'm going to offer the first thing that comes out of my house for him. Which, if it would have been a sheep or a cow that came to him, he would have said, hey, 2 birds with 1 stone, throw it up on the altar. But she said to her father, let this thing be done for me. Let me alone 2 months, that I may go up and down the mountains and bewail my virginity, I and my fellows. So in other words, to mourn that she's going to be a virgin, to remain a virgin. And he said, go, and he sent her for 2 months into the mountains. And then verse 39, it came to pass at the end of the 2 months that she returned unto her father, who did with her according to his vow, which he had vowed, and she knew no man. And it was a custom in Israel that the daughters of Israel went yearly to lament the daughter of Jepthah the Gileadite 4 days in a year. And so did according to his vow, and she knew no man, so she never lost her virginity. So what it seems to be saying was that she was committed to be one to do the work of God, to work in the temple for the Lord, and never got married. That's what it really seems to be saying. And so his bloodline ended right there with her. He had no kids besides her, and she didn't get to carry on his name. And so whatever he would have had, which he wouldn't have had any inheritance anyway, ultimately, because of being a child of a harlot, but still yet, he had no bloodline to follow after him to eventually inherit anything. And so that's what it really seems to be. But the sad thing is, it's great to offer to God, but it's foolish to try and make a vow that could potentially be ridiculous or impossible to keep. And Jesus sort of took this even further in the New Testament when he said, just let your yes be yes and your no be no. Don't make these foolish vows. He was saying, when we go through our life, we shouldn't say, God, if you get us through the situation, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. First of all, we shouldn't be trying to bribe God or make any kind of promises to God in order to get his favor. It doesn't work like that. He's not a gumball machine. You can just throw a quarter in and say, look, God, I paid a quarter, so you're going to give me what I want. On top of that, gumball machines are much less reliable at getting you what you want than God is. But here, he made this vow, promising, he said, God, if you get me through this, I'm going to offer the first thing that comes out my door to you, and I'm going to give you a burnt offering. And we shouldn't be doing that. Of course, in those days, to offer God a burnt offering, that should have just been a given. We won the war, let's give a offering to God thanking him. Let's give him an offering, an outward thanksgiving for what God has done for us. But to make a vow like this is absolutely foolish. It's absolutely ridiculous, and he shouldn't have done it. But then on into chapter 12, verse 1, the men of Ephraim gathered themselves together and went northward and said unto Jephthah, wherefore passest thou over to fight against the children of Ammon, and didst not call us to go with thee? We will burn thine house upon thee with fire. So now the men of Ephraim are saying, hey, Jepthah, you went up there and fought, and you didn't let us have a part of it so that we could get some of the spoils. We're going to burn you and your house. And Jephthah said unto them, I and my people were at great strife with the children of Ammon, and when I called you, ye delivered me not out of their hands. And when I saw that ye delivered me not, I put my life in my hands, and I passed over against the children of Ammon, and the Lord delivered them into my hand. Wherefore then are ye come up unto me this day to fight against me? Or in other words, who do you think you are? Whenever I came and called out to you and asked for help, you all shut us out. And they did. Earlier in the portion that we skipped, basically one part of that was they begged for help, and Ephraim said no. And so he said, look, I took matters into my own hands. And sometimes in our lives we have to say, you know what, though no one join me, still I will follow. Though none go with me, still I will follow, right? So no matter how tough the thing is that God has asked us to do, and no matter how much other people aren't willing to help, we need to do whatever God has called us to do. We as Christians need to be faithful to do whatever God has asked us to do, no matter if nobody else helps us. And also, if we turn down the opportunity to help somebody for God's work, we should not allow ourselves to be jealous whenever something great comes of it, like Ephraim was here, and they're going to learn their lesson very strongly. So he said, why are you coming up to me to fight against me? Then Jephthah gathered together all the men of Gilead. So he said, hey men, come out here and let's settle this with them. And fought with Ephraim, and the men of Gilead smote Ephraim, because they said, ye Gileadites are fugitives of Ephraim among the Ephraimites and among the Manassites. And the Gileadites took to the passages of Jordan before the Ephraimites. And it was so that when those Ephraimites which were escaped said, let me go over, that the men of Gilead said unto them, art thou an Ephraimite? Okay, and we'll get into that in a second. But so they fought, and Ephraim lost very handily. But they were saying, Gileadites, you were Ephraimites anyway. You're fugitives from us. You left us. You abandoned your proper people, and you're in the wrong people. From Ephraim to Manasseh, these are the two children that were Joseph's two tribes, you see, because there were 12 tribal nations within Israel, basically, kind of the way the United States is several states rather than just one big nation singularly. They were kind of like 12 individual tribal nations all coming together and being a united group and a united organization. And since Levi didn't have a part of the inheritance, that would have dropped them to 11. But Joseph's two children, Ephraim and Manasseh, each became their own separate tribe because they were so large. And so with that, there were 12 again. And so that's kind of where the 12 tribes of Israel are. Levites technically aren't one of the 12 individual tribes, but that's for another story. But they basically, they said, hey, you left us and you went to our enemies, because there was so much civil unrest in Israel at that time. And the Gileadites fled. They went to the passages of the Jordan River, and they went to get across and to escape. Then said they, the Gileadites, unto him, whoever they'd caught who wanted to cross the river, say now Shibboleth, which I don't know the Jewish way to say that. I'm sorry, I just don't. I would be one who would lose on this occasion. They'd have thought I was one of the Ephraimites. And he said Sibboleth instead of Shibboleth, Sibboleth, for he could not frame to pronounce it right. Okay, so there was something with the way that the Ephraimites were taught language skills that they didn't know how to say Shibboleth correctly. As far as the word Shibboleth, I want to go ahead and look it up here in my Strong's information. It says a stream. So go ahead and say stream. Also from an ear of grain. By analogy, a branch, ear of corn, a flood. So Shibboleth, the word for a stream. Instead they said Sibboleth, which means an ear of grain, specifically, not talking about the stream. And so they couldn't say the word correctly. It's like not being able to say the word river correctly, somewhat. And so they knew in that moment that it was an Ephraimite and not a Gileadite who knew how to pronounce it properly. Then they took him and slew him at the passages of Jordan. And there fell in that whole war, because Ephraim came against Gilead, of the Ephraimites, there at that time of the Ephraimites, 42,000. 42,000. The Ephraimites should have kept their mouth shut and not tried to get part of the glory in all of that. And that was a very big mistake of theirs. Judges 12:7 then says, Jepthah judged Israel 6 years, then died, Jepthah the Gileadite, and was buried in one of the cities of Gilead. And so that is the end of Jepthah. That is just the final conclusion of his life. He was over. He had no kids beyond that with him. He just became the judge over Israel, and for 6 years of ruling, and then he was done, and he died. And his work was done, and God just let that off. So Jepthah, who was the son of a harlot, was raised up to be the judge over Israel and to help Israel in a major victory during the time whenever they were fighting against the children of Ammon. So Ammon, the Ammonites had risen up and were ready to fight and strike down Israel. And Israel said, we don't know what to do. We're not organized for this. We don't know how to fight. And so they called on him after they had already shunned him and cast him out. They called on him and said, we need your help. He said, okay, but you're going to make me your head, your ruler, if I do this. They went through a huge battle, a lot of little battles in the war. The Ephraimites refused to give them lodging and help during the time, and so it made the Gileadites have to travel a greater distance and struggle and fight. And anyway, it was tough on them. And then in the end, Jepthah made a very bad vow, a mistake, whether it was to offer his child as a burnt offering or whether it was to offer his child to the temple and then also offer a burnt offering, whatever it wound up being. It was a mistake on his part majorly that impacted everything because it stopped him from having any lineage after this. And then Ephraim got jealous, came and struck against Jepthah. Jepthah said, hey, who do you think you are? I took matters into my own hands when you didn't help. And 42,000 Ephraimites died as a result of the Ephraimites being jealous. Jealousy will not get you anywhere you want to be. It'll only cause destruction and death. And then after 6 years, Jepthah passed away, And it moved on, and the next one here, Ibzan, Elon, and Abdon are kind of just one. And we'll talk about that later. And so, anyway, if you have any comments, questions, thoughts, or even a testimony of just what God has done for you today, leave it down in the comment section below this video. Like the video if you like it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon for notifications when a new video goes live. Should be about every morning, 6:15 a.m. that these videos go live, as long as God allows it. Share this video with a friend if you have anyone who you think would be interested in it. Share it on all your social media. And I will see you tomorrow on another daily devotion with Pastor Joe. God bless and have a wonderful day in the Lord.